A millionaire stormed into his mansion at midnight. But before he could even call out, his maid covered his mouth and whispered, "Don't make a sound." At first he thought it was betrayal. But when the shocking truth came out, it changed everything. What she revealed about his son left him frozen on the spot. And you won't believe what happened next. So don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's begin. Ethan Wallace slid his keycard against the penthouse reader and watched the green light blink. Chicago's winter pressed against the glass of the high-rise like a living thing. The city below hissed with late-night traffic and the distant thunder of the L. He wanted silence, bourbon, and the oblivion of a bed he hadn't touched in 3 days. The gala had been a blur of tuxedos and tax write-offs, the kind of room where every handshake tried to measure your soul and price it wholesale. The door eased shut behind him, and a hand clamped over his mouth. He jerked, hard body winding to throw the stranger off, when a whisper brushed his ear, urgent and shaking. "Please don't make a sound." Rosa, he'd hired her 2 weeks ago through an agency. 20-something, soft-spoken, efficient. He'd barely learned her last name. Tonight her hair was tucked back, her uniform wrinkled at the shoulders like she'd been wringing her hands. Her eyes were swollen from crying or from a long, hard night. He couldn't tell which in the dim foyer light. Ethan peeled her hand away, anger flaring, a lawyer's objection rising in his throat. "Who do you think you—" But the words died when he saw her face tilt toward the hallway. "He's walking," she mouthed. He heard it then, the soft slap of small, bare feet on hardwood. A pause, another step. The kind of sound that steals the oxygen from your lungs, because your body remembers it, belongs to someone whose heartbeat once slept against your chest. "Liam?" Ethan whispered before he could stop himself. Rosa's head snapped, a fierce shake. No name, no sudden sounds. "He's not awake." Her voice was low, practiced. "If you startle him, he could bolt. What is happening?" Ethan kept his voice a thread. "Sleepwalking," she said. "It started a few nights ago, same time." He gets up, wanders to the stairwell. "I've been guiding him back." He blinked. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Rosa's mouth pressed into a line. "I left notes with the nanny. She said he'd grow out of it, not her scope. I stayed late." The humiliation hit first of not knowing. Then guilt, quick and metallic on his tongue. Ethan had built empires by anticipating risk, runway, burn rate, downside. In the most expensive square footage he'd ever purchased, the only risk that mattered had been pacing hallways every night while he was negotiating another round. A shadow pulled his attention down the corridor. Liam stood at the far end by the artwork wall, pajama top twisted, hair mussed into sleep curls that always made him look younger. His eyes were open and empty, fixed on something Ethan couldn't see. He looked like a kid posing as a ghost for Halloween, there but not. "Is he—" Ethan couldn't say broken. "His brain is half asleep," Rosa murmured. "We guide, we don't jolt. Follow me." They moved together, a strange choreography of care and strangers. Rosa leading, Ethan half a step behind, staying wide in the hallway like she'd instructed, so he wouldn't block Liam's path or trigger a sudden turn. The apartment hummed its expensive quiet, the refrigerator's low purr, the elevator's distant belly, the white noise machine in Liam's room whispering ocean sounds they'd bought on a night Ethan had missed another bedtime. Liam drifted forward, slow but purposeful, like a magnet tugged him down the corridor. Rosa's hand rose, palm open, a traffic officer to the dark. "See how he reaches his right hand out," she whispered. "He's testing air, not seeing. Don't talk to him unless he stops." "Why the stairwell?" Ethan asked, heart slamming against his ribs. "Routine," she said. "The elevator dings at this hour when the night porter runs mail. He hears it in sleep. His body thinks it's you." The words lanced clean through Ethan's chest. He remembered promising he'd be home before lights out, remembered texting 10 more minutes, and then getting swallowed by a donor who needed to be told he was indispensable. He remembered the nanny's cheery thumbs-up emojis and how easy it had been to take them as proof that love could be subcontracted. They neared the metal door to the service stairwell. A wedge of cardboard had been jammed in the threshold. Maintenance had been testing alarms earlier. Cold air leaked through the gap, touching Ethan's ankles like warning fingers. "Why is that door propped?" he hissed. "I found it like that after dinner," Rosa said. I didn't want to pull it and clang the bar while he was nearby. She put 2 fingers to her lips and blew, not a whistle but a breath shaped into a hush. Liam paused. Rosa slid a step closer, tilting her body so he could smell her, detergent and chamomile tea, and see a familiar silhouette without actually seeing. "Hey, astronaut," she breathed, the nickname she used when they read the book with the moon landing. "Mission Control says it's time to dock." Ethan's jaw loosened. He didn't know that phrase. 1,000 bedtimes had passed. Some he'd caught, many he hadn't. In all of them there were languages spoken that he didn't understand. Liam's fingers flexed at his side, a tiny rippling wave. Rosa nodded to Ethan and held out the stuffed toy she'd tucked into her apron, the little grey rocket with the red felt fins. "Hold this," she mouthed, and placed it in his palm. "Kneel, arms open. No talking." Ethan sank to one knee, the parquet cool through his slacks, and lifted the rocket like an offering. His hands shook. He remembered Liam toddling after him on chubby legs, remembered a summer afternoon by the lake when the kid had fallen asleep on his chest, drooling a little, and Ethan had thought, "I am somebody's safe place." He couldn't remember the last time he had let himself be that still. Rosa stepped into Liam's path and became a quiet moon, bending the tide. She didn't touch him. She simply drifted backward at his speed, shoulder angled so he'd mirror without panic. "That's it," she murmured, voice barely sound. "You're doing great." Liam's gaze slid past her empty and wide until it caught the shape of Ethan's arms. His body listed, a small ship considering the harbor. "Come on, buddy," Ethan said before he could stop himself. Rosa's palm shot up. Ethan clamped his mouth shut. Liam swayed, right foot feeling for a stair that wasn't there, toes curling against smooth wood at the threshold. The service door scraped wider under a tug of gusting air from the shaft, and a deeper cold breathed in. The stairwell yawned black. Rosa didn't flinch. "Dark little astronaut," she breathed. "We're almost home." Liam took 2 drifting steps, then one more, toward Ethan's chest, toward the rocket, toward the heat that had once been every room he knew. When his body finally folded into Ethan's arms, it was like catching the end of a world you were sure would fall. He was light, lighter than Ethan remembered, and solid. The small muscle of him warming Ethan's shirt where his cheek landed. "Got you," Ethan exhaled. Not a word so much as a vow. Rosa eased forward, 2 fingers brushing Liam's wrist with the gentlest pressure. "I'm going to count down from 5, she whispered near his ear, a practiced ritual. 5, 4, 3. Liam's breathing evened, his lashes fluttered. 2, 1. She nodded, satisfied. He can be guided back now. Slow is mercy. They walked as a unit, Rosa leading with soft steps, Ethan carrying his sleeping boy, past the hallway where family photos tried to prove that time had been kind. There was one from a beach trip to Michigan. Liam in an orange life vest, Ethan mid-laugh. Their faces turned toward the sun like they didn't know clouds came. The sight hit Ethan so hard he had to stop and press his cheek to the top of Liam's head. The way you steady yourself against your own house when the ground pitches. In the bedroom, ocean sounds sighed from the white noise machine. The dinosaur nightlight glowed on the dresser, throwing green constellations onto the ceiling. Ethan laid Liam down, tucking the blanket to the boy's shoulders in the way he'd been taught and always rushed. He stood there, not ready to move, watching the rhythmic rise and fall of a chest that made meaning out of his life faster than any deal ever had. Rosa stepped back to the doorway, guarding the quiet. "He reaches for the wall if he wakes," she said, indicating the place they'd stuck glow stars so Liam could touch the sky when he was brave. "If you talk, keep your voice low. Offer water with the straw cup, not the bottle." Ethan nodded, blinking, eyes burning with something he refused to name in case naming would make it run. Only in the kitchen did they breathe like regular humans again. The island was a polished expanse of stone, cold, expensive, and empty. Rosa filled the kettle and set it on, her hands steady now that the storm had passed. "I'm sorry I put my hand over your mouth," she said without looking at him. "I didn't know if the elevator would ding again, and sometimes noises stack in his head and make him run." "You were right," Ethan said. The admission surprised him with its weightlessness. "Thank you for staying." "You weren't scheduled. I live nearby," she said. "My little brother used to do this. Parasomnia runs in our family when we're stressed." The corner of her mouth tried to smile and didn't. Liam's a sweet kid. He says my name. Ethan asked, the word small. In sleep, she said. Sometimes he says Dad's shoes like he's listening for them at the door. The kettle began to purr. Ethan pressed his palm to the countertop, needing something firm. He saw the doorman's sympathetic look earlier that week, the nanny's breezy texts, the teacher's email he'd flagged and never opened, traces of a map he'd refused to read. I'll be here in the mornings, he said. Starting tomorrow. I'll make pancakes, Rosa nodded. Banana with cinnamon. He calls them mooncakes. I didn't know that, Ethan whispered. The kettle clicked off. Rosa poured, the steam drawing lines in the air like script. Presents, she said gently, sliding a mug toward him. Kids don't measure it in hours. They measure it in rituals. They stood in a silence that felt like the good kind, space being made rather than emptied. A thud sounded from down the hall. Ethan looked up, every tendon in his body a pulled wire. He fell? Rosa was already moving, a shadow of urgency but not panic. No, different sound. She pointed, past Liam's door toward the service corridor that ran behind the laundry. Another thud, heavier this time, followed by the unmistakable scrape of metal on metal. The stairwell, Ethan said, dread gathering like weather. Rosa's eyes flicked to the hall camera screen, mounted discreetly by the thermostat. The building installed security feed only staff ever used. The tiny monitor showed the grey video of the service landing outside their floor. The cardboard wedge that had been propping the door was gone, and the door, slowly as if nudged from the other side, was swinging open again. Rosa's thumb hovered over the call button, then pressed. Night desk. It's Rosa from PH2. Please route quiet security to the service stairwell. No radios, no chatter. We have a possible prowler on our landing. She paused, listening. Yes, keep the elevator muted. And please, no knock on the penthouse door. She hung up and looked at Ethan. 2 minutes. Ethan's gaze cut from her to the tiny black and white monitor again. Empty stairs, a metal rail, a slice of concrete slick with winter damp. He couldn't shake the feeling that the stairwell itself was listening, a throat waiting to cough up the next sound. I'm going to sit with him, he said. Good, Rosa answered. Leave his door cracked 2 inches. If anything changes out here, I'll meet you there. In Liam's room, the ocean sound machine whispered its fake tide, and a Brontosaurus nightlight pushed green constellations onto the ceiling. Ethan eased into the chair beside the bed, the old rocker that had ferried a smaller version of this boy through colic and fevers. He took in the details he'd trained himself to ignore. Pencil smudges on the wall where Liam measured imaginary rocket heights, a paper ring of planets dangling from a bent paperclip. The straw cup Rosa had mentioned, beaded with condensation on the nightstand. Liam's lashes trembled, but he slept, breath puffing against the blanket in small warm clouds. Ethan set his phone to silent and slid it into the dresser drawer. No distractions. He wrapped both hands around the straw cup, greedily absorbing its I-know-what-to-do warmth like a man in a storm clutching a map. Footsteps in the other room, soft, deliberate. A gentle rap of knuckles on a far wall. A code that meant friendlies if you were a person like Rosa, who moved through wealthy homes with the stealth of a firefighter. Ethan stepped back into the hall. 2 figures waited by the service corridor, both in dark jackets with staff badges turned inward. Alicia, a compact woman with a runner's posture and a muted earpiece, nodded once. Beside her stood the night manager, Patel, tie loosened, eyes clear the way only a man who lived his life on nights could keep them. Camera caught a silhouette, Patel whispered, landing outside your floor for approximately 18 seconds. Then down. Could be a curious resident. Could be nothing. Residents don't use the service stairs at midnight, Alicia murmured. They complain about the smell. Ethan swallowed. We heard breathing. Alicia pulled a small flashlight covering most of the lens with her thumb to deliver a slit of light. We'll clear the landing quietly. Mr. Wallace, best if you stay inside and... I'm going, Ethan said, surprising himself with the solidity of it. My son is 20 feet away from that door. Alicia studied him, measuring whether his presence would be an asset or a liability. Rosa saved the question by stepping in. He'll stay behind me and only move on command. It was not a request. It was an agreement everyone accepted because it was true. Alicia eased the service door latch and the cold breathed out again. The beam of her thumb-muted flashlight slid across metal and concrete. The landing was small, barely a square of space before the steps dropped away. Nothing human, nothing moving. Yet the sensation of recentness lingered, like a chair you can tell was just vacated by the heat it gives off. Patel knelt and pointed to the threshold. There, a thin crescent of dark on brushed steel. Not oil, not dirt, something sticky. Rosa dipped the edge of a paper towel into it. It stretched into a spider silk thread. Packing gum or resin, she whispered. People use it to deaden latches. If you press enough into a strike plate, you can pull a door without the click. She stared at the wedge of cardboard discarded 3 steps down. They propped the door earlier. Came back with resin now, learning. Alicia's jaw tightened. We have roof cameras and lobby. These service stair landings are the only true blind corners. We sweep them, but... She shrugged one shoulder. A patient person can test rhythm. Rhythm? Ethan asked. Habit, Rosa translated. When does the elevator ding? When does the cleaner run the floor? When does a little boy walk? The words hit like a soft mallet to Ethan's sternum. He wanted to do something. Install a gate, hire a guard to sleep outside the door, weld the world shut. But Rosa's expression told him a truth he didn't want. Safety was not a fortress. It was a practice. Alicia lifted the light again and caught another detail. 2 small strips of blue painter's tape, barely darker than the stair paint, stuck low on the outer edge of the landing. Markers, she muttered. Someone's marking where the door sits open without tripping the closer. That's not a bored neighbor. Patel's phone buzzed on silent. He glanced. Lobby cam. A hooded figure exited to the alley 15 minutes ago. Could be ours, could be a DoorDash with commitment issues. I want full footage, Ethan said. Everything for the last week. If someone's been learning my son's pattern. Alicia raised a palm. We'll pull it quietly, no lobby gossip. They worked in practiced sequence. Patel photographed the latch. Alicia peeled one piece of the blue tape into a bag. Rosa wiped the door edge clean and loud on purpose, so any future hand would feel the latch announce itself. When they'd finished, Alicia slid a new discreet door alarm sensor from her pocket. Temporary, she said, sticking it to the frame. It pings my phone, not the panel. If this door opens again tonight, it'll buzz my bone before a siren gets the floor jumping. Back in the kitchen, Patel turned to Ethan. Sir, I'd like to recommend a temporary assignment. We can post an overnight rover on this floor for the next week. He won't be visible to other residents, and he'll keep to the service side. Do it, Ethan said, and upgrade whatever you need. Bill me. He didn't care if he sounded like a man trying to use money to fix what money didn't cause. He would use every tool he had and learn the ones he didn't. Patel nodded and was gone, moving with the soundless efficiency of a man used to doing good work in the margins where no one claps. Alicia lingered. 2 things, she said softly. 1, if the nanny brushed off notes, change the nanny. 2, kids sleepwalk more when they're stressed. Routine is armor. Her gaze flicked to Rosa in quiet respect. She knows. When the staff door clicked shut, the penthouse felt like it exhaled. The refrigerator hummed. The heater sighed back to life with a whisper of warm air along the baseboards. Rosa set water to boil again, as if heat could stitch up the cold places they'd opened. Ethan rubbed his eyes. Behind the lids, images flashed. A sliver of sleeve, a resin-slick latch, tiny strips of blue tape like stitches on a wound, and Liam, weightless and warm, collapsing into his arms at the stairs. I can't believe I didn't know, he said, not to be absolved, but to say it out loud so it couldn't hide. Now you do, Rosa said, not unkind. That's how changes start. He wanted to ask her 100 questions about this mysterious discipline she had mastered, how to move, how to speak, how to be the kind of presence a sleeping child trusted. Instead, he asked the simplest one. What do I do tonight? Rosa poured tea and slid a mug to him. Move the rocker so he sees your silhouette when he stirs. Keep the straw cup where his hand can find it. If he sits up fast, don't rush to speak. Be there first. If he starts to leave the bed, stand, crouch, open your arms. Give him something to dock to before you give him words. Ethan nodded, letting the instructions settle like sand in water. And you? I'll take the first hall watch, she said. 1 hour, then I go. You take the rest. He opened his mouth to argue that she should stay, then closed it. She was right. This was his job. At 1:12 a.m., the door sensor Alicia had installed remained dark. At 1:38, The elevator groaned somewhere far below, far enough that the sound arrived like a memory. At 2:04 the heater clicked, and Liam sighed in response, as if the apartment itself had stroked his hair. At 2:17, Rosa appeared in the doorway like a whisper and tapped her wrist. "Your hour." Ethan slipped into the room and settled in the rocker. The chair recognized him the way a faithful dog would, complaining a little at the unfamiliar weight, then falling into an old remembered sway. He picked up the paper mobile that had tangled earlier and freed Saturn from Mars. His hands shook less now. At 2:41, Liam's fingers flinched under the blanket. A micro-wake. Ethan stilled, not even daring to breathe. Liam's eyes fluttered, then crept open, glassy, unfocused. He pivoted at the waist and placed his feet on the rug, a small astronaut preparing a blind EVA. Ethan stood immediately, lowering himself to one knee at the bed's edge, arms open, hands empty, but ready. He let his breath make the only sound in the room. Liam's head turned toward the dark where the doorway yawned, where a stairwell once almost swallowed him. Then it turned back toward the heavier dark where Ethan knelt. Not a word. Not a command. Just gravity, father-shaped. Liam folded forward and toppled into the offered harbor. Ethan caught him and felt a dam inside himself break, not loud, not catastrophic, just a surrendering of a pressure that had made him hard in the wrong ways. He eased the boy back into bed, guided fingers to the straw, felt the small pull of a sleepy sip, then the slackening weight that means sleep has won again. Ethan stayed kneeling long after he needed to, pressing his forehead to the mattress edge, like a man grateful for an altar that took him back with no questions. Rosa's shadow appeared and withdrew, reading the moment and giving it space. By 3:30, the penthouse was the safe kind of quiet. Ethan slid into the rocker with a blanket across his legs and watched the constellations shift on the ceiling as the night inched forward. He drafted an email in his head to his chief of staff cancelling breakfast, then another to the nanny asking for keys, ID, a conversation, and her resignation. He rehearsed pancakes, banana, cinnamon, mooncakes. He made a list of rituals that could fit into 10 minutes that cost nothing. A handshake. That meant "I see you," a rocket, placed on a pillow with a note that read, "Docking." Cleared? A backpack zipper checked by the same hand that had once buckled a car seat. At 4:07, Alicia's sensor pinged her phone, far away, not here. She would later text Rosa that the ping was from a door 3 floors down. For now, Ethan only knew that nothing in his immediate world had torn. At 5:12, dawn began to pencil a thinner black around the edges of the blinds. Rosa returned with 2 folded sheets. "I'm leaving," she whispered. "You're good here." He stood, stretching stiff knees, and followed her to the kitchen. "Rosa," he said, and stopped, not sure how to fit the right words into the space between them. "Thank you" felt small. "Sorry" felt too late. He tried something else. "You saw my son when I didn't. I won't forget that." She accepted the sentence without vanity. "See him again tomorrow," she said simply. "And the next day. That's how memories know where to find you." She pulled on her coat. He noticed then how thin it was for a Chicago winter, frayed at the cuff where a thumb had worried it raw. He made a note, quiet, private, to fix that in a way that didn't turn gratitude into charity. Rosa reached for the service corridor, then paused, looking back toward the monitor. "Lock this door behind me," she said. Wait for the click. Then double-check Liam. He nodded. The door sighed. The latch clicked. The lock turned. Routine, brick by brick, where a fortress had failed. He turned to go back to Liam when his phone, still on silent, shivered against the kitchen stone. A banner lit the screen, unknown number. Then a voicemail notification. He almost ignored it. Curiosity pried. He pressed play and lifted it to his ear. Static. The hush of an alley or a stairwell microphone with wind hissing through the grill. Then a whisper, low, careful, practiced. Not Rosa's, not anyone he knew. "Doc, little astronaut," the voice breathed, and the world inside Ethan snapped taut. "We're almost home," the message ended. No number, no callback, just the phrase only 2 people in the world had spoken in that hall tonight. Drifting back to him from a place where cameras didn't see, he stood very still, phone cold against his palm, the city starting its slow morning hum 1,000 feet below, and knew 2 things at once. He was exactly where he needed to be, and someone else knew that too. The sun's first light crept into the skyline. casting golden lines across the glass walls of the penthouse. Ethan hadn't slept a minute. He had spent the entire night at his son's side, rocking slowly in the old chair, ears straining for the smallest sound, eyes darting to the door every time the pipes creaked or the elevator groaned far below. His phone, still heavy with the chilling voicemail, lay face down on the nightstand. He couldn't bring himself to delete it. It felt like proof that someone had been there, watching, listening, knowing too much about his son's fragile nighttime ritual. When Liam stirred again around dawn, Ethan's heart leapt. The boy rubbed his eyes, his hair sticking out in every direction, and squinted at the man in the rocker. For a moment, confusion shadowed his little face, then relief replaced it. "Dad?" he whispered, his voice raspy with sleep. "I'm here, buddy," Ethan said softly, leaning forward. "I'll always be here." Liam blinked again and asked the kind of innocent question that shattered Ethan's heart. "You're not leaving for work?" For years, Ethan had lived by a schedule that measured his worth in deals signed and hours billed. He had been the man who kissed his son's forehead while Liam was still half asleep. The man who made promises about making it up to him with toys or trips. But now, looking into his son's sleepy eyes, he felt the crushing weight of how those absences had carved hollows in Liam's heart. "Not today," Ethan whispered, pressing his forehead gently against his son's. "Today it's just you and me." Liam smiled, a small drowsy curve of his lips, and curled back under the blanket. Ethan stayed, hand resting lightly on the boy's back until his breathing evened again. Only then did he stand and step quietly into the kitchen, where Rosa was already moving like she belonged to the rhythm of the home, in a way he hadn't in years. She had set 2 mugs on the counter, one steaming with coffee, the other with warm milk. "You didn't sleep," she observed, her eyes flicking to his pale face. "I couldn't," Ethan admitted. "Not after that message," Rosa's brow furrowed. She had replayed the voicemail once herself, before handing the phone back, and the words had unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. "Dark little astronaut, we're almost home." It wasn't just creepy, it was intimate. It was a phrase she had whispered only hours ago, in a moment meant to guide Liam safely back to bed. Whoever had repeated it hadn't just been near, they had been close enough to hear every syllable. "I've worked in wealthy homes a long time," Rosa said slowly, "and I've seen carelessness in all of them. Doors left unlatched, routines broadcast to strangers, nannies who come and go without thinking anyone watches. But this—" She shook her head. "This is deliberate." Ethan leaned against the counter, his hands gripping the edge so hard his knuckles whitened. "You think someone's been tracking him?" "Not just him," Rosa replied firmly. "You, the both of you. Whoever it is, they've been paying attention to patterns, sleep times, elevator runs. Nights you're gone." Her words stabbed him with guilt. Ethan's calendar had been public to too many people. Assistants, drivers, even social media posts from galas, where photographers had snapped him smiling in tuxedos while Liam was asleep in this apartment, alone, but for strangers. He thought he was building a future, but maybe he had been building a blueprint for someone else to exploit. At 8 a.m., Patel returned with Alicia, this time in daylight. They brought files, photos, and a thumb drive with overnight footage. "We swept the stairwell 3 more times," Patel said, sliding a folder onto the counter. "No sign of the intruder, but we did find residue on the handle 3 floors down. Whoever it was, they moved between levels." Alicia spread the photos across the island. Grainy stills from hallway cameras showed a blurred figure in a hood, loitering near service entrances. Another still caught the faint reflection of something metallic in the person's hand. A key. A tool, no clear face. Just the outline of someone patient enough to wait in the shadows. "We can't prove intent," Alicia said, her voice flat. "But we can prove presence, and that's enough for us to escalate security." "Do it," Ethan ordered, his voice low but fierce. "I don't care what it costs." Patel hesitated. "There's another issue. We checked the log. The only people with coded access to this stairwell are staff and family. No outsider should be able to reach this floor without tripping alarms." Ethan's stomach sank. "Family?" Patel nodded grimly. "The nanny. She has a master code as part of childcare clearance." Rosa's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Ethan, however, felt the ground shift beneath him. The nanny, who had brushed off the sleepwalking, who left early, who dismissed notes as unimportant, was suddenly at the center of his unease. I want her gone, Ethan said coldly. Effective today, Patel made a note. We'll collect her badge and keys before she sets foot here again. After they left, Rosa finally spoke. You know, firing her may close one door, but Liam's stress won't vanish overnight. He walks because something unsettles him. Fear, absence, loneliness, you can fix the locks. But can you fix that? The question hit him harder than the threat itself. Could he? For years he had built companies, secured investors, delivered results. But he had never invested in presence. He sat at the dining table, elbows on the polished surface, and stared at the skyline, where sunlight bounced off skyscrapers like glittering shields. Then help me, he said quietly. Help me be what he needs. Not just today. Every day, Rosa studied him carefully, weighing his sincerity. She had worked in homes where fathers made promises like business deals, words without weight. But this time she saw something different. The fear in his eyes wasn't about wealth or reputation. It was about a boy with messy hair and rocket pajamas who whispered his father's name into the dark. She nodded slowly. Start small. Breakfast together every morning. 10 minutes of real presence. No phones, no staff. Just you and him. And bedtime. You, not me, not anyone else. Children measure love in rituals, not in gifts. Ethan exhaled, the knot in his chest loosening slightly. Breakfast, bedtime, I can do that. You must, Rosa corrected. Not can. Must. Later that morning, Liam padded into the kitchen, his tiny feet slapping against the cold floor. He climbed onto a stool and looked at the pancakes Rosa had made. Banana with cinnamon, he grinned. Mooncakes. Ethan sat beside him, watching as Liam dug in, syrup dripping down his chin. For once, Ethan didn't glance at his phone. He didn't think of meetings or contracts. He only thought of how his son laughed when Rosa cut the pancakes into rocket shapes. But as that laughter filled the kitchen, Ethan's phone buzzed again. A new voicemail, no number. He pressed play with trembling fingers. Static. Then the same whisper as before, clearer this time. He doesn't need pancakes. He just needs his dad. Ethan's blood ran cold. Those were Rosa's words from last night, exactly as she had said them. Someone wasn't just listening. Someone was recording and replaying their private lives back to them. The kitchen, moments ago filled with the innocent sound of Liam's laughter, went silent as the voicemail ended. Ethan's hand trembled around the phone, his knuckles whitening until it felt like the device might shatter in his grip. He doesn't need pancakes. He just needs his dad. Word for word. The exact sentence Rosa had spoken across the hallway bench last night. The color drained from Rosa's face. She reached instinctively for the phone, then pulled her hand back, realizing she didn't need to hear it again. Her eyes darted toward Liam, who was still chewing happily, syrup streaking his cheeks, blissfully unaware of the dread that had just soaked the room. Don't react in front of him, she whispered, lips barely moving. He can feel tension even if he doesn't understand it. Ethan nodded stiffly, forcing a smile for his son. Hey, buddy, he said, his voice cracking. Finish up those pancakes. I'll be right back. He kissed Liam's head and stepped into the adjoining hallway, Rosa close behind. Once they were out of earshot, Ethan let his facade drop. They're recording us, he hissed. Not just watching. Not just listening, recording. His voice was ragged with fury, fear, and something darker. Shame. His home, the place he had believed untouchable, had become a stage set for someone else's script. Rosa pressed a hand to her mouth, thinking quickly. It means they have access inside. No one could repeat those words unless they were near enough to hear them. Either microphones are planted, or someone close is feeding them. Ethan's mind immediately jumped to the nanny. Patel had promised to strip her access, but what if she had already opened the door to something worse? What if her carelessness wasn't incompetence but complicity? He clenched his fists. She's done, finished. But even if she's gone, how do I know there aren't bugs hidden in this place? How do I know they haven't been listening for weeks? Rosa's expression hardened. Then we tear it apart. Every vent, every socket, every corner. Wealth built these walls, but it also built blind spots. You've trusted the wrong people to guard what mattered most. Ethan stared at her, startled by the steel in her voice. This young woman, barely in her 20s, had more courage in her small frame than he had felt in years of boardroom battles. She wasn't just protecting Liam because it was her job. She was protecting him because she cared. Within the hour, Patel and Alicia were back, armed with a small team in plain clothes carrying sweep equipment. They moved methodically, room to room, running scanners across walls, checking for unusual frequencies, unscrewing outlets. Liam was ushered into the living room with cartoons blaring softly. Rosa sitting beside him with calm, steady presence, her hand resting lightly on his back, as though anchoring him to a safe reality. Ethan paced like a caged animal, watching the sweep unfold. Every minute that passed without a discovery twisted his stomach tighter. If nothing was found, it meant the intruder had been physically close, listening with their own ears, close enough to whisper into stairwell shadows. Then, in the corner of Liam's playroom, Alicia's scanner beeped. She crouched, pulling at the base of a stuffed toy bin. Taped underneath was a tiny black device, no larger than a thumb drive, its red light blinking faintly. She held it up with a gloved hand. "A transmitter," she said grimly. "Short range. Likely bouncing to a receiver somewhere else in the building. Whoever planted this had direct access." Ethan's stomach dropped. The playroom. The very space his son used most often. They hadn't just been listening to him and Rosa's late-night conversation. They had been eavesdropping on everything. Liam's laughter. His cries. His whispered pleas for his dad. Rosa's eyes glistened, her jaw tightening. "They were stealing his private world," she whispered. Patel found another device tucked behind a vent in the hallway. Then another, taped beneath the kitchen island. Each one a tiny parasite, sucking moments of intimacy and feeding them to someone lurking in the shadows. By the time the sweep was over, 5 devices had been recovered. Alicia laid them on the counter in a neat row like evidence in a trial. "These aren't cheap," she said. "Someone invested in this." Ethan gripped the counter so tightly his fingers hurt. "Who?" "We're tracing frequencies now," Patel answered. "But this isn't a prank. This is targeted. They wanted your son's life documented, which means they wanted leverage." The words were gasoline on Ethan's fury. "They picked the wrong family," he growled. "They think they can use Liam to get to me, to control me. They don't understand. He's the only reason I'd burn the world down if I had to." Rosa touched his arm gently, steadying him. "Anger won't protect him. Presence will. Don't let them use your fear to widen the cracks." Her words pulled him back from the edge. He nodded, forcing himself to breathe. She was right. He had spent years outsourcing love, delegating attention, turning presence into something others could provide. No more. That night, Ethan made a decision that shocked everyone, including himself. He cancelled 3 international trips, told his partners he was stepping back temporarily, and cleared his schedule. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about stock prices or deals. He was thinking about storybooks at bedtime, breakfast pancakes, hand-in-hand walks to school. But as the house grew quiet again, the devices locked away in Patel's evidence bag, Ethan couldn't shake the gnawing dread. Someone had been close enough to capture words never meant for outsiders. Someone had been patient, deliberate, and dangerous, and though the bugs were gone, the voicemail still echoed in his head. "Doc, little astronaut, we're almost home." Now it wasn't just a phrase, it was a threat. A reminder that whoever was out there hadn't finished yet. They had only begun. The city outside roared into its usual rhythm, horns echoing from the streets below. The vibration of subway lines snaking under Chicago's frozen soil, the faint whistle of wind slipping between glass towers. But inside Ethan Wallace's penthouse, the world felt paused, suspended in a fragile silence that threatened to shatter with the slightest touch. The 5 recovered listening devices now sat locked in a steel case on Patel's lap. Rosa had taken Liam into his room for a nap, whispering a bedtime story, with the gentleness of someone who knew children carried the weight of atmosphere more than words. Ethan remained at the kitchen island, staring at the devices in a row, their red lights now dark. To him, they looked less like machines and more like predators, tiny black insects that had fed on his son's innocence. "How long?" Ethan finally asked, his voice low, almost hoarse. Patel shifted uncomfortably. "Could be days, could be weeks. These devices overwrite after a set storage cycle. But someone has been monitoring in real time. They didn't just plant them for later retrieval. They've been listening as it happens." Ethan's grip tightened on the edge of the marble counter. His temples throbbed with guilt. For years he had thought protecting his son meant insulating him with wealth, nannies, tutors, walls of glass and steel. Now that very distance had given intruders space to slip inside unnoticed. "Why Liam?" Ethan whispered. "Why target a 6-year-old boy?" Alicia's voice was steady, clinical. "Because you're untouchable in the boardroom. Because your fortune, your reputation, your network make you a fortress. But a child is your weak point. They don't want him. They want you. And they know you'll burn everything down to keep him safe." Ethan turned, eyes burning, fists clenched. "Then let them come." "No." Rosa's voice cut through like steel wrapped in silk. She had entered quietly, her presence steady as always, Liam asleep in the crook of her arm. She adjusted the boy gently, brushing his hair from his forehead, then looked at Ethan directly. "Don't say it in front of him. Don't even think it when he's near. Children read fear like second language. If you let anger turn you into a weapon, he'll feel it, and he'll think it's his fault." Her words deflated his rage, leaving only exhaustion. Ethan reached out, touching Liam's small hand dangling from Rosa's shoulder. "Then what do I do?" "You show him," Rosa said softly. "Every morning, every night. You show him that he's more important than meetings, more important than money, more important than fear. That's what presence is. That's what they can't steal." Patel cleared his throat. "Mr. Wallace, we'll increase patrols. Plainclothes security on your floor. Silent sweeps every night, cameras recalibrated. But you need to understand, whoever is behind this has resources. They're patient. They're organized. And they won't stop just because we removed a few devices." Ethan exhaled heavily. "Then we fight patience with vigilance. Whatever it takes." Later that afternoon, Ethan sat with Liam at the dining table, crayons scattered everywhere. The boy drew crooked rockets and stick-figure astronauts, narrating in half-sentences how they flew past Saturn's rings and waved at Martians. Ethan listened, not half-listened, not nodding while scrolling through emails, but truly listened. He asked questions, laughed at the absurdity of purple aliens, even added his own clumsy drawing to Liam's page. For the first time in years, Liam's laughter wasn't shadowed by distance. It was full, unburdened, ringing through the apartment like music. Ethan felt something shift inside him, a cracked ceiling, a hollow filling. But just as quickly a chill returned. His phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. Hands trembling, Ethan stepped into the hall to listen privately. Static filled his ear, then the same low whisper. "Children don't feel belief. They feel presence." Ethan's chest tightened. That was Rosa's line, exactly what she had told him the night before in the hallway. Whoever was out there was still listening, still close, still feeding on their most private truths. That evening, Rosa prepared to leave, slipping her coat over her uniform. Ethan met her at the door, his voice thick with something he hadn't let himself admit until now. "You've done more for him in 2 weeks than I've done in 2 years. Rosa shook her head. "Don't measure it like that. Don't turn it into another ledger. Just start now. He doesn't need perfection. He needs you." Ethan swallowed hard, nodding. "Will you stay on?" "Not as staff." "As?" He faltered, not sure how to label what she was becoming. A protector, a guide, something more than either. Rosa gave him a small, tired smile. "I'll stay until you don't need me to remind you how to be a father, but the rest is yours alone." She stepped into the hallway, but before the door closed, she turned back, her eyes sharp. "One thing, Mr. Wallace. Whoever is behind this isn't just after your money. They want to break your bond with him. Don't let them. That's the real battle." The door clicked shut, and Ethan stood there in the silence, Rosa's words lingering like a vow. He turned toward his son's room, where the faint glow of the nightlight spilled under the door. And in that moment he realized money could buy walls, guards, and cameras, but only he could give Liam the one thing no intruder could steal, his presence. Still, as he returned to sit at his son's bedside, he couldn't shake the dread curling in his gut, because every whispered voicemail carried the same message. They were inside. And he knew deep down that the next time the intruder made their move, it wouldn't be just a recording. It would be something far worse. The night came heavier than the ones before. The city's neon lights blinked far below, but inside the penthouse the atmosphere was different, thicker, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the dread that had been growing for days. Ethan tucked Liam into bed himself, pulling the blanket up to his chin, brushing his hair aside with a tenderness he hadn't let himself feel in years. The boy yawned, clutching his toy rocket, and whispered, "Don't go, Dad." "I won't," Ethan promised, his voice low but firm. "I'll be right here until morning." He meant it not as a pacifying lie but as a vow etched into the marrow of his bones. He sat in the rocker, watching his son's breathing steady, feeling the rhythm of responsibility settle on his shoulders, heavier than any billion-dollar deal. Rosa lingered by the door for a moment, her eyes soft but her voice serious. "He trusts you tonight," she said quietly. "Don't let that fade." Ethan nodded, and Rosa slipped into the hallway, leaving him alone with the sound of Liam's small breaths and the faint hum of the white noise machine. For hours Ethan stayed still. He thought of the life he had built, glittering towers, gala dinners, endless contracts, all of it suddenly meaningless compared to the rise and fall of a child's chest under a blanket decorated with cartoon stars. He thought of the voicemails, the stolen words, the planted devices, and rage simmered under his calm. But he held it down because Rosa was right. Fear and anger fed the intruder more than silence ever could. At 2:13 a.m., the sensor Alicia had installed on the service door buzzed on Ethan's phone. A single vibration. No sound, no alarm, just a private signal. Ethan's blood froze. He glanced at Liam, still asleep, then rose silently and moved into the hall. The door camera showed the stairwell door ajar again, a slice of darkness seeping through. This time, Ethan didn't wait for Patel or Alicia. He couldn't. His son was sleeping 20 feet away, and the thought of a stranger inching closer made his veins burn. He grabbed the nearest heavy object, a fireplace poker from the corner stand, and edged toward the service corridor. The air was colder here, the draft from the stairwell brushing against his bare arms. He pushed the door open with one hand, poker raised in the other. The stairwell yawned before him, a vertical tunnel of concrete and shadows. For a moment it was silent. Then footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing from just one flight below. "Who's there?" Ethan demanded, his voice low but edged with steel. His words bounced down the stairwell, but no reply came. Only more footsteps retreating downward. He should have gone back. He should have locked the door and waited for security. But something in him snapped. The father in him, the man who had spent too long letting others guard what was his. He charged down one flight, heart hammering. The stairwell smelled of dust and faint cigarette smoke. The light above flickered. At the landing below, he caught sight of a figure, hooded, tall, gloved hands brushing the rail as they descended another flight. Ethan's chest surged with fury. "Stop!" he barked. But the figure didn't even glance back. Instead, a soft laugh echoed up the stairwell, eerie in its calm. Then, in the same whispering tone from the voicemails, the figure spoke. "He doesn't need a hero. He just needs his dad." Ethan's stomach twisted. The words had been stolen, repeated again like a knife turned inside him. He leapt forward, but the intruder slipped farther down, their footsteps fast but measured, as if mocking him. By the time he reached the next landing, the door below slammed shut. Silence returned thick and mocking. Breathless, Ethan stood there, gripping the poker so tightly his hands ached. Rage surged, but behind it came something sharper, clarity. This wasn't random. This was personal. Whoever this was, they didn't just want to scare him. They wanted to test him, break him, maybe even make him question his own worth as a father. When he finally returned to the penthouse, Rosa was waiting in the hall, her face pale. "You went after him, didn't you?" "I couldn't just—" "You can't leave him alone, Ethan," she snapped, pointing toward Liam's room. "That's what they want. To pull you away, to make him wake up without you there, to prove you're still absent, even when you're in the building." The words stung because they were true. He clenched his jaw, lowering the poker. He was one flight down. One more second and he could have been— "But he wasn't," Rosa said firmly, stepping closer. Her eyes glistened, but her voice was steady. "He's asleep, safe because you stayed. Don't let them turn you into the father you used to be, the one who was gone when it mattered." Ethan's shoulders slumped, his anger melting into exhaustion. He dropped the poker onto the floor, its clang echoing through the marble hall. For the first time, he felt the true weight of the battle. It wasn't against a faceless intruder or hidden devices. It was against himself, against the man who thought money was enough, who thought presence could be delegated, who thought absence could be excused. He returned to Liam's room, his legs heavy. The boy stirred slightly as Ethan sat in the rocker again, murmuring softly in his sleep, "Dad?" "I'm here," Ethan whispered, voice cracking. "But I'm not going anywhere." As dawn bled into the sky, painting the city gold once more, Ethan made a silent vow. He didn't know who the intruder was yet, or why they had targeted his family. But he knew this. No one, no whisper, no shadow would take him from his son again. The devices could be found, the doors locked, the stairwells guarded. But the real fortress was here, in this room, in this moment. A father awake and present, a boy safe in his orbit, and though Ethan knew the fight was far from over, he finally understood the truth Rosa had been trying to teach him all along. Love wasn't something you built for the future. Love was built in the now. Still, as the city came alive, he couldn't shake the echo of that laugh in the stairwell, or the whispered words that clung to him like a curse. He doesn't need a hero. He just needs his dad. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And Ethan Wallace was ready, for the first time in his life, to fight not as a businessman but as a father. The penthouse was silent, except for the faint hum of the heater and the city's muffled roar far below. But inside Ethan Wallace's chest, a storm raged louder than any city. He stood in the narrow service corridor, poker still clutched in his hand, every muscle rigid. The stairwell door groaned open, and the hooded figure finally revealed his face. Lucas Grant, the man Ethan had once trusted with every plan, every ambition, every dollar. Once his partner, now a ghost from his past, returned with eyes hollow from bitterness and rage. His face was thinner, cheekbones sharp as knives, beard unkempt. But the smirk was the same. The smirk Ethan remembered from long nights at the office when Lucas believed they were invincible. "Well, look at you," Lucas said, his voice low but carrying in the concrete stairwell. "Ethan Wallace, the shining star of Chicago finance. The man who built an empire, who let the world applaud while I fell into the gutter. Do you know what it's like to watch your family walk out on you? To lose everything, while the man who promised to have your back just walked away?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "You destroyed yourself, Lucas. Don't rewrite history. You gambled with clients' money. I tried to save you." Lucas let out a laugh, sharp and bitter. "Save me? No, Ethan, you saved yourself. You built walls of glass and steel, hid behind them with your son, and let the world believe you were noble. But I see the cracks. I've heard the cracks. The boy cries for you in his sleep. He whispers your name in the dark. And you're not there." The words pierced Ethan deeper than any knife. He thought of Liam's little voice murmuring "Dad" in the night, reaching into emptiness. Lucas twisted the knife further. "That's why I left you those messages," Lucas continued. His tone softened mockingly, repeating in that eerie whisper, "Doc, little astronaut. We're almost home." His eyes gleamed. "Do you know what it felt like to say those words? To use your maid's little comfort phrases against you? To know that I was closer to your son's world than you were?" Rage surged through Ethan, hot and blinding. He took a step forward, poker raised, but Rosa's hand caught his arm, grounding him. Her eyes were fierce, urgent. "Don't let him control you." Lucas saw the hesitation and smirked wider. "You're weak, Ethan. Too soft to fight me, too absent to protect him. That boy doesn't need a hero." "Oh, but he does. And maybe—" He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Maybe he needs a better father than you'll ever be." Ethan's entire body shook. Patel and Alicia moved in behind, weapons drawn, their presence steady, but Ethan barely registered them. All he saw was the man who had invaded his home, stolen his son's trust, poisoned the one bond that mattered most. "You don't get to say his name," Ethan growled, his voice low, trembling with fury. "I don't get to breathe near him." Lucas tilted his head, almost amused. "Then prove it. Be the father you never were. Because as long as you leave cracks, I'll be there, watching, listening, whispering in the dark." Patel stepped forward. "That's enough. Hands where I can see them." Lucas chuckled but lifted his hands slowly, mock surrender. His eyes, though, never left Ethan's. "This isn't over," he murmured. "Not until you learn what it feels like to lose the one thing you love." Security lunged, pinning Lucas against the stairwell wall, snapping restraints on his wrists. He didn't resist. He laughed, a hollow, broken sound that echoed through the concrete shaft like a curse. Ethan stood frozen, every breath burning in his lungs. Rosa squeezed his arm gently. "Don't move," she whispered. "Liam's still asleep. Hay needs to wake up to peace, not chaos. Only then did Ethan lower the poker, his hand trembling as the weight of everything crashed over him. He realized Lucas had been right about one thing. Not about being a better father, but about the cracks. Those cracks had been real. His absence had carved them deep. But now, holding his ground in that stairwell, Ethan knew something with absolute clarity. Lucas could whisper all he wanted, plant devices, creep in shadows. It didn't matter, because Ethan Wallace was finished running his life like a business deal. He was here now. He was staying. And no one, not even a ghost from his past, would ever take Liam's trust from him again. When the stairwell door finally slammed shut behind Patel and Alicia, escorting Lucas away, Ethan turned toward his son's room. Through the crack of the door, he saw Liam curled under his blanket, his small face calm. Unaware of the storm that had nearly swallowed him, Ethan stepped inside, sat back in the rocker and whispered almost like a prayer, "I'm here, buddy. I'm not going anywhere." And for the first time, he truly meant it. The stairwell door thudded shut, and the echo crawled back into silence. Patel's men led Lucas away in zip cuffs, his laugh fading down the concrete throat of the building. Ethan stood very still, one hand braced against the cold steel, until Rosa touched his shoulder and tilted her head toward the hallway. "Go," she whispered. "He needs to wake up to you." Ethan left the service corridor and crossed the hushed apartment, past the kitchen island, where 5 tiny transmitters had once glowed like angry insects, past the family photos he'd stopped noticing years ago. In Liam's doorway, he paused. The nightlight sent green constellations across the ceiling. His boy was a small curve under a blanket of cartoon stars, rocket tucked beneath his chin like a secret. Ethan slipped into the rocker and breathed with him, slow and even, until his own pulse stopped trying to sprint out of his chest. Minutes later, faint voices. Patel returned with 2 uniformed officers, one writing, one watching the room as if danger could still cling to the air. Alicia stood behind them, face set, phone in her palm showing grainy screenshots from the stair cameras. "We're transporting him," Patel said quietly. "CPD'll book on unlawful surveillance, trespass, stalking, burglary tools. We'll add counts if we find where the signal was bouncing." Ethan nodded, eyes never leaving Liam. "How long?" "Enough to hold, not enough to satisfy you," Alicia said, frank as always. "We'll need to build the bigger case." "Then build it," Ethan said. "I'll give you everything. Schedules, logs, access lists, whatever you need." Alicia's mouth twitched. "Start with a conversation you probably don't want to have." He knew before she said it. "The nanny. Her badge pinged 3 times in the service corridor after hours this month," Alicia said. "Not a smoking gun, but she posted a selfie in your foyer last week. Your keypad's in the background. 4 digits reflected in the brass frame. We think he skimmed the code from a screenshot." Rosa winced. She was careless. Ethan looked at his sleeping son and let the anger pass through him without landing. "I'll handle it in the morning," he said. "Not now." "Good," Patel said softly. "Let him have this night." They left the way they'd come, quiet, efficient, leaving more order than they'd found. At the threshold, Alicia paused. "We'll rotate a plainclothes outside your door for the next 2 weeks. Discreet. You focus on the small human inside that room." When the apartment swallowed the last footstep, Ethan stood and eased himself onto the floor beside Liam's bed. He slid a hand under the blanket until his fingers curled around his son's. Liam's breath hitched, then steadied. "I'm here," Ethan mouthed into the dark. "Doc, whenever you want." Morning found them in a different rhythm. No emails, no galas, no leaving. The first sound was the scrape of a whisk in a metal bowl. The first light was the pale stripe climbing the cabinets. The first laugh was a cereal box snort, when Ethan dropped an egg on the floor and pretended it was a meteor. Rosa set plates. Liam named planets between bites of banana cinnamon pancakes, mooncakes, and explained very seriously that Mars is not red, not really, just rusty. At 9, the doorbell chimed. The nanny stood small in the doorway, ponytail tight, eyes flicking past Ethan to inventory the apartment she no longer owned with her routine. Patel had come up behind her, polite but immovable. "I came for my things," she said. "And to clear this up." Ethan led her to the kitchen. He kept his voice level. "Did you give anyone my code?" "No," she said quickly, then faltered. "But I posted a photo just once. The light was good and—" She stopped when she saw his face. "It didn't occur to me." "It had to occur to you," Rosa said quietly. You are asked to care for a child. The nanny's chin lifted, brittle. I am not responsible for your security theater. I was hired to supervise nap time and snacks. I'm not a bodyguard. Ethan thought of blue tape on concrete and resin smeared into a latch. He thought of a whisper curling up a stairwell like smoke. He didn't raise his voice. You were hired to be present, he said. And you weren't. We'll courier your last check and a reference that says only what's legally required. Your badge and keys, please. Her cheeks flushed a blotchy red. She slid the badge across the counter, set the keys beside it, and left without another word. When the door latched, the apartment seemed to exhale again. Sometimes it's subtraction, Rosa murmured. You can't build a safe rhythm with noise in the beat. Ethan nodded. Help me write the new one. They sat at the table and made a list in Liam's blunt crayons. Docking ritual. Bedtime. 3 slow breaths. Rocket ready. Dad's arms first. Words later. Morning 10. Breakfast at the table, no phones, 1 silly joke, 1 real question. Stairwell rule. Service door locked, sensor checked, whenever in doubt. Call Rosa Alicia Patel. Afternoon walks. Hand in hand to the park. 1 cloud shaped like a thing we agree on. Dad's promise. If work must pull, he says where he's going and when he'll be back, and he is. The list went on the fridge under a magnet shaped like Saturn. Liam added a crooked star sticker at the bottom and announced the plan official. At noon, a CPD detective called. We Mirandized Mr. Grant, she said. He lawyered up. We did get a quick hit on one of the frequencies from your devices. Receiver was inside a storage locker 3 floors down, rented under a shell company. We pulled 2 more bugs, a radio and a notebook, full of rough timetables. Looks like he studied the building's rhythms, not just yours. Any sign of accomplices? Ethan asked. Not yet, she said. But he didn't plant all of this alone. We'll keep digging. After the call, Ethan found Rosa in Liam's room, kneeling by the lower bookshelf. She had pulled out a thin stack of picture books and a small cloth bag of paper stars. When I was little, she said, eyes on the floor, my mom worked nights. We had a system. If she couldn't tuck me in, she'd leave a paper star on my pillow and I'd know she was thinking of me while I fell asleep. It wasn't the same as being held, but it was better than wondering. Ethan swallowed. Will you teach me? The parts I don't know. I'll stay until you don't need me, she said. But you learn it now. That afternoon they drove to a pediatric sleep clinic, whose waiting room was crowded with stuffed owls and watercolor moons. The specialist, Dr. Hale, spoke in sentences that landed like small useful stones. Parasomnias are common. Stress can be a match. Routines are water. Doors are gates, but arms are better ones. Don't shout him awake, she said. Don't argue with a brain that isn't fully online. Guide. Offer anchoring sensory cues, smell, touch, breath. You're teaching his nervous system the route back to Doc. Ethan took notes as if they were the only numbers he'd ever need to memorize. He left with a checklist in his pocket and a steadier breath in his chest. On the way home, Liam asked from the back seat, Are we astronauts again tonight? We're always astronauts, Ethan said. But you're mission commander now. I'm your crew. Liam considered this with the seriousness only 6-year-olds bring to reassigning the galaxy. Okay, he said. Then you have to do what I say. Deal. Dusk poured itself between the towers and softened everything it touched. At bedtime, Ethan dimmed the lights and sat on the carpet so his eyes were level with Liam's. Here's our mission, he said. Brush, book, breaths, Doc. What about the rocket? Liam held up the soft gray toy. Rocket goes in first, Ethan said. So your hands are free for hugging. They practiced. 3 slow breaths together, noses almost touching. Say a story. Shorter than Ethan wanted to make it. Longer than his old life would have allowed. Lights low. Her palm on the small warm chest under the blanket. Liam's eyes did their lazy fish flutter. Dad? He murmured. Yeah, buddy. You were gone a lot before. I was, Ethan said. Honesty tasted like humility and clean air. I told myself I was building something for you, and I forgot to build with you. That was wrong. I'm sorry. Liam blinked, absorbing as much as 6 could hold. Are you going to be here now? Ethan pulled him close. Every morning you open your eyes and every night you close them. I'm going to try to be the first and last thing you see. Sometimes I'll mess up. When I do, I'll tell you, and I'll come back. Liam nodded like a man closing a contract and tucked his head under Ethan's chin. Doc, he whispered. Doc, Ethan echoed, and felt the word change shape, from a whispered lure in a stairwell to a small, Good anchor in a dark room. Rosa watched from the doorway and slipped away. 3 nights passed. No pings from the sensor, no voicemails, no whispers curling up from the service landing. The building replaced the stairwell closer, installed a tamper alarm that called Alicia's phone directly, and banned photos in staff areas. Patel sent nightly texts, quiet, all clear, and added a smiley when he learned emoji etiquette from his teenage niece. On the 4th night, Liam stirred. Eyes open, unfocused, feet on the rug. Ethan had been waiting, muscles loose from practice. He rose, dropped to a knee at the bed's edge and opened his arms, offering heat before words. Liam rocked forward into him, like the body knows where to go when a path is worn. Ethan held, counted to 5, and guided him back, offered the straw, waited for the 3 swallows Dr. Hale had promised, with a switch back to deeper sleep. Liam sighed and sank. Mission commander off duty. Ethan stayed on the floor, forehead against the mattress, and let quiet gratitude throb where panic had lived. In the days that followed, there were other repairs. He met with the board and delegated 3 portfolios. He put his name on the school's volunteer list and did the thing he'd always avoided, standing in a circle of other parents and talking about nothing weighty at all. He learned which jokes landed in a first-grade cafeteria, banana peels forever, and which didn't, capital gains. He replaced the rocker in Liam's room with a quilted armchair, big enough for both of them, and a stack of books with spines that would fray under new rituals. He also sat across from Rosa at the kitchen table one afternoon, the city blazing behind her, and said, "Your coat is too thin for February." She made a face. "Do not make an investment out of me," he smiled. "Too late. I'm investing in our rituals." He slid a card across the table, tuition paid for the night courses in early childhood development she'd been Googling at odd hours. No strings, just a thank you that isn't a speech. She traced the embossed letters with a fingertip. "Presents," she said. "It's not something you can outsource." "I tried," he said. "I was wrong. You're doing it now," she stood. "Go, he's waiting." Liam was in the hall with 2 paper helmets, one sized for a small head, one so large it slid down Ethan's ears. "Mission Commander," Liam announced. "We're going to the moon of the laundry room. There's a monster under the sink, but it's friendly." "Lead the way," Ethan said, and they marched down the corridor together, past a service door that was finally just a door again. A week later, the detective called with an update. Lucas had been denied bail. The storage locker yielded a list of dates, a burner phone, a roll of blue painter's tape, and a map of the building drawn in a tight, angry hand. No accomplices confirmed, though a building vendor was being questioned for passing schedules. "Why?" Ethan asked, not to soften anything, just to name it. The detective hummed, paper shuffling on the other end. "He said you left him to drown. He wanted you to feel helpless. He wanted the house where you felt most powerful to be the place you felt weakest. He never asked for money. He never intended ransom. If we had to put it in one word, humiliation." Ethan looked at the armchair in the corner of his son's room, the paper mobile above it gently turning. "He failed," he said. When he hung up, he found Liam on the floor with Rosa, building a tower of wooden blocks. It leaned precariously, a skyscraper pretending it was a lighthouse. "Dad," Liam said without looking up, "we need you to put the last piece." "What happens if I make it fall?" Ethan asked. Liam grinned. "Then we build it again." Ethan slid onto the rug, the city beating its metallic heart 1,000 feet below, and set the final block into place with both hands steady. That night, after the book and the breaths and the quiet, after the soft dock and the settled weight of a boy falling into sleep, Ethan stayed in the doorway a long time. The apartment was still. The sensor light on the service door glowed a calm, unblinking green. The kettle ticked as it cooled. Somewhere above, wind pressed a palm against the building's skin and then let go. He thought of walls and locks and cameras, of strategies and schedules and shells of companies and blue tape. He thought of how easily you can confuse control with care. And he thought of a small hand finding his in the dark, a ritual learned and earned, a word reclaimed. He turned off the lamp and let the constellations have the ceiling. "Good night, Commander," he said softly. From the bed, half dreaming, a voice like a tide turning answered, "Good night, crew." Outside, the city spun. Inside they docked. The days after Lucas's arrest rolled forward with a strange mixture of calm and unease. On the surface, everything looked safe. The service doors repaired, sensors steady, security guards rotating silently through the night. Lucas was locked away, his face now just another mugshot in the police database. But Ethan Wallace knew that safety wasn't only about walls and locks. It was about presence, about rituals that stitched the fractures of a family back together. Every morning began with pancakes, banana sprinkled with cinnamon. Ethan would be the first one at the table, waiting for Liam's small footsteps to pad across the floor. He learned how his son liked to pour the syrup in circles, not lines. He laughed when Liam called blueberries space rocks and insisted they had to be placed on top of the rocket-shaped pancakes like fuel pods. Every night ended the same way. 3 slow breaths. One short story, a whispered dock as Liam nestled into the blanket with his rocket toy. Ethan would stay until the boy's breathing evened into the rhythm of dreams. He had once thought success was measured by skyscrapers and contracts. Now he measured it by these rituals, small anchors that held his son close. Rosa, too, remained part of this new world. She had become less an employee and more a steady guide, a bridge between the chaos of what had been and the peace of what could be. She reminded Ethan gently when old habits tried to creep back, when his phone buzzed too often, when his eyes drifted toward the glowing skyline instead of the child across the table. She never scolded. She simply repeated the words that had first cut him open. Children don't feel belief. They feel presence. One evening, weeks later, Patel visited to give his final report. Lucas had pled guilty to multiple charges, but what stunned Ethan was what Patel revealed last. He wasn't after ransom, Patel said. He wasn't trying to steal money. He wanted to steal trust. He told investigators that if he could make your son doubt you, make him feel abandoned, then he would have taken away the one thing you couldn't buy back. Ethan sat quietly, letting the truth sink in. For years he had been giving Liam everything except the one thing that mattered, himself. Lucas hadn't invented those cracks, Ethan had. But now he was filling them brick by brick with presence. Later that night, Ethan sat beside Liam's bed as the boy stirred from sleepwalking. The same routine, arms open, gentle guidance, rocket toy ready. Liam fell back into bed without fear, his hand clutching Ethan's shirt until he settled again. Ethan stayed longer than needed, whispering softly into the dark. "You'll never be alone again, buddy. Not while I'm here." In that moment he realized Lucas had failed. The whispers, the devices, the shadows, they hadn't broken the bond. They had forced Ethan to see what truly mattered. They had forced him to come home, not just to his penthouse but to his son. Weeks turned into months. The routines deepened into rituals, the cracks sealed with presence. The skyline still glittered at night, galas and contracts still called, but Ethan no longer let them own him. His son's laughter, his quiet dock at bedtime, that was the empire he wanted to build. On a warm spring morning, Liam climbed into Ethan's lap with his rocket toy and said, "Dad, you're my crew forever." And Ethan, with tears burning in his eyes, finally answered with a truth he knew down to his soul. "Forever. Commander, forever." The story ended not with whispered threats in stairwells, not with shadows in the dark, but with the quiet, steady heartbeat of presence, a father finally home and a boy who knew it,